Malibu Rising. Malibu catches fire. It is simply what Malibu does from time to time. Tornadoes take the flat land of the Midwest, floods rise in the American South, hurricanes rage against the Gulf of Mexico, and California burns. The land caught fire time and again when it was inhabited by the Chumash in 500 BCE. It caught fire in the 1800s when Spanish colonizers claimed the area. It caught fire in December 4, 1903, when Frederick and May Ringe owned the stretch of land now called Malibu. The flames seized 30 miles of coastline and consumed the Victorian beach house. Malibu caught fire in 1917 and 1929, well after the first movie stars got there. It caught fire in 1956 and 1958, when the longboarders and beach bunnies trickled to its shores. It caught fire in 1970s and 1978 after the hippies settled in the canyons. It caught fire in 1982, 1985, in 1993, in 1996, in 2003, 2007, and 2018, and in times between, because it is Malibu's nature to burn. At the city line of Malibu today stands a sign that reads Malibu, 27 miles of scenic beauty, a long thin township. An area that hugs the slim coast for almost 30 miles is made up of ocean and mountain, split by a two-lane thoroughway called the Pacific Coast Highway or PCH. To the west coast of PCH is a long series of beaches cradling the crystal blue waves of Pacific Ocean. In many areas along the coast, beach houses are crammed along the side of the highway, competing for views narrow and tall. The coastline is jagged and rocky. The waves are brisk and clear. The air smells of fresh brine. Directly to the east of PCH lie the immense arid mountains. They dominate the skyline, sage green and amber, composed of desert shrubs and wild trees, brittle underbrush. This is dry land, a tinderbox, blessed and cursed with a breeze. The local Santa Ana winds speed through the mountains and valleys from the inland to the shore, hard and strong. Myth says that they are the agents of chaos and disorder. But what they really are is an accelerant. A tiny spark in the dry desert wood can grow to a blaze and run wild, burning bright orange and red. It devours the land and exhales thick black smoke and overtakes the sky, dimming the sun for miles, ash falling like snow. Habitats, brush and shrubs, trees and homes, cabins and mansions and bungalows, ranches and vineyards, farms go up in smoke and leave behind a scorched earth. But that land is young once again, ready to grow something new, destruction and renewal, rising from ashes, the story of fire. The Malibu fire of 1983 started not in the dry hills but on the coastline. It began at 28150 Cliffside Drive on Saturday, August 27 at the home of Nina Riva, during one of the most notorious parties in Los Angeles history. The annual party grew widely out of control sometime around midnight. By 7 a.m., the coast of Malibu was engulfed in flames. Because just as it is in Malibu's nature to burn, so was it in one particular person's nature to set fire and walk away. Saturday, August 27, 1983. Part 1. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 a.m. Nina Riva woke up without even opening her eyes. Consciousness seeped into her slowly, as if breaking the morning to her gently. She lay in bed dreaming of her surfboard underneath her chest in the water before she began remembering reality, that hundreds of people were going to descend upon her house in just over 12 hours. As she came to, it dawned on her once again that every single person who would show up tonight would know the indignity of what had happened to her. She lamented it all, without even peeking through the curtains of her own eyelashes. If Nina listened closely, she could hear the ocean crashing below the cliff, just faintly. She had always envisioned buying a home, like the one she and her siblings grew on, in down on Old Malibu Road, a shabby beach bungalow off PCH, built on stilts extended out over the sea. She had found memories of sea spray on the windows, of half-rotted wood and rusting metal holding up the ground beneath her feet. She wanted to stand on her and look down in order to see high tide, hear the waves crashing loudly underneath her. But Brandon had wanted to live on a cliff. So he had gone and bought them his glass and concrete mansion in the cliffside enclave of Point Dume. 50 feet above the coastline, a steep walk down the rocks and stepped through the breaking waves. Nina listened as best she could for the sounds of the water, and she did not open her eyes. Why would she? There was nothing for her to see. Brandon was not in her bed. Brandon wasn't in the house. Brandon wasn't in Malibu. He was in Beverly Hills Hotel, with its pink stucco and its green palm trees. He was, most likely at this early hour, cradling Carrie Soto in his sleep. When he woke up, he would probably take his big paw off a hand and move her hair out of the way and kiss her neck, and then the two of them would probably start packing together for the US Open. Ugh. Nina didn't hate Carrie Soto for stealing her husband, because husbands can't be stolen. Carrie Soto wasn't a thief. Brandon Randall was a traitor. He was the sole reason Nina Riva was now on the cover of the August 22 issue of Now This magazine under the headline, Nina's Heartbreak, How One Half of America's Golden Couple Got Left Behind. It was an entire article dedicated to the fact that her tennis pro husband had publicly left her for his tennis pro mistress. The cover image was flattering enough. They had pulled one of the photos from a swimsuit shoot in Maldives earlier that year. She was wearing a fuchsia high-leg bikini. Her dark brown eyes and her thick eyebrows were framed by her long brown hair, lightened by the sun, looking a tad wet, a faint curl still in it. And then, of course, there were her famous lips, a billowy bottom lip topped by her thinner upper lip, the Riva lips, as they had been dubbed when they were made famous by her father Mick. In the original photo, Nina was holding a surfboard, her yellow and white town and country 6'2" thruster. On the cover, they had cropped it, but she was used to that by now. Inside the magazine, there was a picture of Nina in the parking lot of a Raffala's grocery store from 3 weeks prior. Nina had been wearing a white bikini with a flowered sundress thrown on over it. She had been smoking a Virginia Slims and carrying a 6-pack of Tab. If you looked closely, you could tell she had been crying. Next to it, they put a photo of her father from the mid-60s. He was tall, dark, and conventionally handsome in a pair of swim trunks, a Hawaiian shirt, and sandals, standing in front of Trancas Market, smoking a Marlboro and holding a bag of groceries. Over the photos ran the title, The Apple Doesn't Fall Far from the Riva Tree. They'd framed Nina as the dumped wife of a famous man on the cover, the daughter of a famous man on the inside. Every time she thought about her, her jaw tensed up. She finally opened her eyes and looked at her ceiling. She stood up out of bed, naked except for a pair of bikini underwear. She walked down the concrete stairs into the tiled kitchen, opened the sliding glass doors that looked onto her backyard, and stepped out on the patio. She breathed in the salt water. It was not yet hot that morning. The breeze that stalks all seaside towns was running offshore. Nina could feel the wind across her shoulders as she walked onto the perfectly cut grass, feeling the stiff edges of the blades between her toes. She walked until she got onto the edge of the cliff. She looked out onto the horizon. The ocean was as blue as ink. The sun had settled into the sky an hour ago or so ago. Seagulls chirped sharply as they dove and rose over the sea. Nina could see the waves were good. A clear swell was moving in towards Little Dume. She watched a set come in, watched them go unridden. It seemed like a tragedy. Those waves hitting the breaks all by themselves, no one there to claim them. She would claim them. She would let the ocean heal her, like she always had. She may have been in a house she never would have chosen. She may have been left by a man she could not even remember why she'd married. but the Pacific was her ocean. Malibu was her home. What Brandon had never understood was that the glory of living in Malibu was not living in luxury, but raw nature. The Malibu of Nina's youth had been more rural than urban, the rolling hills filled with dirt paths and humble shacks. What Nina loved about her hometown was how ants found their way to your kitchen counters. Pelicans sometimes shit on the ledge of your deck. Clumps of horse manure sat along the sides of the unpaved roads, left there by the neighbors riding their horses to the market. Nina had lived on this small stretch of coast her entire life, and she understood she could do little to prevent it from changing. She had seen it grow from humble ranches to middle-class neighborhoods. Now it was becoming a land of oversized mansions on the beach. But with vistas this beautiful, it had been only a matter of time before the filthy rich showed up. The only real surprise was that Nina had married one of them, and now she owned this slice of the world she supposed, whether she liked it or not. In a moment, Nina would turn around and walk back into the house. She would put on her swimsuit and head right back to this spot where she would descend the side of the cliff and grab her board from the shed. She kept on the sand, but right that second, Nina was thinking only of the party tonight, having to face all of those people who knew her husband had left her. She wasn't ready to turn around. Instead, Nina Riva took on the edge of the cliff she'd never wanted and looked out onto the water she wished was closer, and for the first time in her quiet life, screamed into the wind. "Stay here." Jay Riva hopped out of his CJ8, jumped the 5-foot gate, walked down the gravel drive, and knocked on the door of his older sister's house. No response. "Nina," he called out, "you up?" The family resemblance was striking. He was slender and tall, like she was, but more powerful than ready. His brown eyes, long lashes, short rumpled brown hair made him the kind of handsome that breeds entitlement. With his board shorts, faded t-shirt, sunglasses, and flip-flops, he looked like he was a championship surfer. Jay knocked again, slightly louder. Still nothing. He was tempted to pound on the door until Nina got out of bed because he knew eventually she'd come to the door. But now was not the time to be dick to Nina. Instead, Jay turned around, put his Wayfarer's back on, and walked back to his Jeep. "It's just you and me this morning," he said. "We should wake her up," Kit said. "She'd want in on those waves." Tiny Kit. Jay started the car and began his 3-point turn, careful to make sure the stick stayed put in the back. "She watches the same forecast we do," he said. "She knows about the swell. She can take care of herself." Kit considered this and looked out the window. More accurately, she looked out where a window might have been if the car had doors. Kit was slim and small and tightly built, all sinew and tanned skin. She had long brown hair, lightened with lemon juice and sunshine, freckles across the bridge of her nose and onto the apples of her cheeks, green eyes, full lips. She looked like a miniature version of her sister, without any of the grace and ease, beautiful but maybe a bit awkward. Awkward but maybe beautiful. "I'm worried she's depressed," Kit said finally. "She needs to get out of the house." "She's not depressed," Jay said, as he came to the intersection where the neighborhood roads met PCH. He looked to his left and then to his right, trying to time his turn. "She's just been dumped, is all." Kit rolled her eyes. "When Ashley and I broke up," Jay continued, they were now flying north up PCH, the base of the mountains to the right, the vast clear blue ocean to the left, the wind so loud Jay had to shout. "I was upset about it. But then I got over it, just like Nina will soon. That's how relationships are." Jay seems to be forgetting that when Ashley had broken up with him, he was so upset that he wouldn't even admit that it had happened for almost 2 weeks. But Kit wasn't going to mention that and risk bringing up her love life. At the age of 20, Kit had not yet kissed anyone. And it was a fact that she felt every day, every moment, some more acutely than others. Her brother often talked to her as if she were a child when it came to love. And when he did, she found herself reddening, equal parts embarrassment and rage. The car approached a red light, and Jay slowed down. "I'm just saying, getting in the water is probably what she needs right now," Kit said. "Nina will be fine," he said. With no one else at the intersection, he put his foot on the gas and drove on, even though the light had to change. "I never liked Brandon anyway," Kit said. "Yes, you did," Jay said, catching her eye out of the corner of his. He was right. She had liked him so much. They all had. The wind roared as the car speeded up, and neither of them spoke until Jay pulled a U-turn and took a spot on the side of the road at county line, an expanse of sand at the very northern edge of Malibu where surfers hovered in water all year round. Now, with the southwest swell, there would be waves, hollow enough to get barreled and maybe show off a little if they were so inclined. Jay had taken first and third in 2 United States surfing championships. He had 3 surfers' monthly covers in as many years, a sponsorship with O'Neill, an offer from Rogue Sticks to shape a line of Riva brand shortboards. He was a favorite going into the first ever Triple Crown later that year. Jay knew he was great, but he also knew that he attracted attention based in part on who his father was, and sometimes it was hard to tell the line between the two. Mick Riva's shadow excelled at haunting each one of his children. "Ready to show these cooks how it's done?" Jay said. Kit nodded with a sly smile. His arrogance both infuriated and amused her. By certain population, Jay might have been considered the most exciting up-and-coming surfer on the mainland, but to Kit, he was just her older brother, whose aerials were getting stale. "Yeah, let's go," she said. A short guy with a gentle-looking face and a wetsuit half undone around his hips spotted Jay and Kit as they started to get out of the car. Seth Whittles. His hair was wet, slicked back. He was wiping his face off with a towel. "Hey man, I thought I might see you here in the morning," he said to Jay as he came around the side of his Jeep. "The tubes right now are classic." For sure, Jay said. Seth was 1 year younger than Jay and had been 1 grade behind him in school. Now in adulthood, Seth and Jay ran in the same circles, surfed the same peaks. Jay got the sense that felt like a victory for Seth. "Big party tonight," Seth said. His voice had the slightest edge of bravado to it, and Kit instantly understood. Seth was confirming he was invited. Kit caught Seth's eye as he was speaking, and he smiled at her as if just now realizing she existed. "Hey," he said. "Hi." "Yeah man, party's on." "At Nina's place in Point Dume, just like last year?" Cool, Seth said, one eye still watching Kit. As Seth and Jay continued talking, Kit got on the boards out of the back and backs them both down. She started dragging them to the shoreline. Jay caught up with her. He grabbed his boat out of her hands. "So I guess Seth is coming tonight," Jay said. "I gathered," Kit said, trying her leash out onto her ankle. "He was." "Checking you out?" Jay said. He hadn't ever noticed someone checking Kit out before. "Nina? Sure, all the time, but not Kit." Jay looked at his little sister again with fresh eyes. Was she hot now or something? He couldn't even stand to ask himself the question. "Whatever," Kit said. "He's a good guy, but it's weird," Jay said. "Somebody's copying out my little sister in front of me like that?" "I'm 21 years old," Kit said. Jay frowned. "Still." "Yeah. Well, I'd rather die than suck face with Seth Whittles," Kit said, standing up and grabbing her board. "So don't lose sleep over it." Seth was an all-right-looking guy, Jay figured. He was nice. He was always falling in love with some girl or another, taking them out to dinner and shit. Kit could do worse than Seth Whittles. Sometimes she made no sense to him. "You ready?" Kit said. Jay nodded. "Let's go." The two of them headed into the waves as they had countless other times over the course of their lives, laying their bodies down on their boards and paddling out, side by side. There were already a handful of people in the lineup, but it was easy to see Jay's prominence as he made his way past the breakers, as the man in the water saw him coming towards them. Hood River, short, where his siblings were tall, stocky, where they were lithe, who spent the summer getting sunburned as they grew bronze, was the smartest one of the bunch, far too smart to not understand the true ramifications of what he was doing. He was 8 miles south on PCH, going down on his brother's ex-girlfriend, Ashley, in an Airstream, illegally parked on the Zumba beach. However, this was not how he would have phrased it. For him, the act was making love. There was simply too much heart in all of it, in every breath, for it to be anything cheaper than love. Hood loved Ashley's one dimple and her green gold eyes and her gold hair. He loved the way he could not pronounce anthropology, that she always asked him how Nina and Kit were doing, and that her favorite movie was Private Benjamin. He loved her one snaggletooth that you could only see when she laughed. Whenever she caught Hood looking at it, she'd get embarrassed, covering her mouth with her hand and laughing even harder. And he loved that about her too. In those moments, Ashley would often hit him and say, "Stop it, you're making me self-conscious," with the sparkle still in her eyes. And when she did that, he knew she loved him too. Ashley often told him she loved his broad shoulders, his long eyelashes. She loved the way she always looked out for his family. She admired his talent, the way the world looked more beautiful through his camera than it did right in front of her. She admired that he could get in just as dangerous waters as the surfers did, but that he swam or balanced on a jet ski, holding up a however many pound camera, capturing in perfect light and motion what Jay could do on the board. After all, it wasn't just Jay who had made the cover of the Surfers Monthly 3 times in as many years. So had Hood. All of the most famous shots of Jay were by Hood. The wave breaking, the boat cutting through the water, the sea spray, the horizon. Jay might be able to ride the wave, but Hood was the one making it look beautiful. The name Hudson River was in all 3 times of those issues. Ashley believed that Jay needed Hood as much as Hood needed Jay. Which is why when Ashley looked at Hood River, she saw a quiet man who did not need attention or accolades. She saw a man whose work spoke for itself. She saw a man instead of a boy, and in doing so she made Hood feel like more of a man than he ever had before. Ashley's breath got shallower as Hood moved faster. He knew her body knew what she needed. This wasn't the first or the second or 10th time he'd done this. When it was over, Ashley pulled Hood up to lie next to her. The air was muggy. The two of them had shut all the windows and doors before they had even kissed, for fear of being seen or heard or even sensed. Ashley sat up and cracked the window near the bed, letting the breeze in. The salt air cut the humidity. They could hear families and teenagers on the beach, the waves rolling onto the shore, the sharp whistle of a lifeguard at the nearest tower. So much of Malibu was restricted beach access, but Zuma, that wide stretch of fine sand and unobstructed coast against PCH, was for everyone. On a day like this, it attracted families from all over Los Angeles, trying to squeeze one last memorable day out of summer vacation. "Hi," Ashley said softly, shy and smiling. "Hi," Hood said, charmed. He grabbed the fingers of Ashley's left hand and played with them, weaving his own fingers between them. He could marry her. He knew that. He'd never felt it this way about anyone, but he felt it for her. He felt like he'd known it since the day he was born, though he knew that couldn't possibly be right. Hood was ready to give Ashley all of him, anything he had, anything he could give. The wedding of her dreams, however many babies she wanted. What was so hard about dedicating yourself to a woman? It felt so natural to him. Hood was only 23 years, but he felt ready to be a husband, to have a family, to build a life with Ashley. He just had to find a way to tell Jay. "Tonight," Ashley said as she sat up to get dressed. She pulled up her yellow bikini bottom and threw on a white t-shirt that said UCLA in blue and gold across the chest. "Wait," Hood said, sitting up, his head almost hitting the ceiling. He was wearing navy blue corduroy shorts and no shirt. There was sand on his feet. There was always sand on his feet. It was the way he and his brothers and his sisters had grown up. Sand on their feet and on their floors and in their cars and bags and in shower drains. "Take your shirt off, please," Hood said as he leaned over and grabbed one of his cameras. Ashley rolled her eyes, but they both knew she would do it. He pulled the viewfinder down, looked at her directly. "Your art." Ashley rolled her eyes again. "This is such a lame line." Ashley smiled. "I know, but I swear I have never said it to any other woman on this planet." This was true. Ashley took her hands and crossed them over her chest. She grabbed the bottom edge of her shirt and pulled it off her head. Her long sandy hair falling down her back and around her shoulders. As she did all of that, Hood held down the shutter, capturing her in every state of undress. She knew she would look beautiful through his lens. As he clicked, she grew more and more comfortable, blooming at the idea of being seen by him. Ashley slowly took her hands and put them on her bikini bottom and untied the strings holding to it, and in 3 swift clicks, it was gone. Hood stopped for an imperceptible second, stunned at her willingness, at her initiative to become even more bare in front of this camera that he had ever asked of her, and he continued. He photographed her over and over and over again. She sat down on the bed, crossed her legs, and he moved closer and closer to her with the camera. "Keep shooting. Shoot until we are done." And then she pulled at his shorts and let them fall down and put her mouth on him. And he kept photographing her until they were done, when she looked up at him and said, "Those are just for you. You have to develop them yourself. But now you'll have them forever because I love you." "Okay," Hood said, still watching her, stunned. She was so many incredible things at once, confident enough to be this vulnerable, generous but in control. She always felt so calm around her. Even when she thrilled him, Ashley stood and tied her bikini bottom back on, put her shirt on with conviction. "So like I was saying about the party tonight," Ashley looked at Hood to gauge his attention. "I don't think I should go." "I thought we decided," Hood said, but Ashley cut him off. "Your family was enough problems right now." She started flipping her feet into her sandals. "Don't you think?" "You mean Nina?" Hood said, following Ashley to the door. "Nina's going to be fine. You think this is the hardest thing Nina had to go through?" "That's even more to the point," Ashley said as she walked out of the airstream, her feet hitting the sun hitting her eyes. "I don't want a spectacle. Your family, attracts a lot of attention," Hood offered. "Exactly, and I don't want to be one of more problems for Nina." It was this kind of thoughtfulness for his sister, despite having met her only a few times, that Hood had found so enchanting about Ashley from the beginning. "I don't know, but we have to tell them," Hood said, pulling Ashley towards him. He put his arms around her shoulders, tucked her head underneath his. He kissed her hair. She smelled like tanning oil, fake coconuts and bananas. "We have to tell Jay," he clarified. "I know," Ashley said. She rested her head on Hood's chest. "I just don't want to be this person." "What person?" "The bitch you know that comes between brothers." "Hey," Hood said, "me falling in love with you is my fault, not yours, and it was the best thing I ever did." Fate trips up sometimes. That's the conclusion Hood had come to of a lot of things that had happened in his life. Whatever hand was guiding him, guiding everyone towards a certain future, there is no way it could work without error. Sometimes the wrong brother meets the girl first. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Hood and Ashley, they were simply correcting fate. It doesn't even make sense. I was with Jay, Ashley said, pulling back from him except for where her hands interlaced with his. That's what I thought the first time I saw you, Hood said. I thought that girl doesn't belong with Jay. Do you think I belonged with you? Hood shook his head. No, you're far too good for me. Well, at least you recognize it. Ashley pulled far away this time, sinking her heels into the sand, letting Hood's grip on her be the only thing keeping her from falling down. Hood let her hang for a moment and then pulled her back to him. You should come tonight, he said, and we will tell Jay and it will all be okay. There was an unspoken pact between them that what they were going to tell Jay was going to be a lie, a half-truth. They were going to tell Jay they were together. They were not going to tell him that they had started sleeping together one night 6 months ago when they had ran into each other on the Venice board week, back when Ashley and Jay were still together. Ashley had been wearing a denim jacket over a coral dress that was floating up with the breeze. Hood was in white shorts and a blue button-down, a pair of short topsiders on his feet. Each had been out drinking with friends when they had found themselves passing each other just outside a tourist shop selling tank tops with cheesy catchphrases and cheap sunglasses. They stopped to say hi and told their friends until they realized they weren't going to catch up with their friends at all. They kept talking as they slowly started walking together down the boulevard, going into shops and bars. Hood tried on a straw cowboy hat and Ashley laughed. Ashley jokingly grabbed a Wonder Woman lasso and pretended to twirl it in the air, and Hood could tell, the way Ashley smiled at him, that the night was becoming something bigger than either of them intended. Hours later, after a few too many drinks, they crammed themselves into one of the bathroom stalls of a bar called Mad Dog's. Ashley whispered into Hood's ear, I always wanted you instead. I always wanted you instead. She'd always wanted him instead. A second after she'd said it, Hood had kissed her and grabbed her legs, pulled her up around his waist and against the wall. She smelled like a flower he couldn't name. Her hair felt fine and soft in his fingers. No one had ever felt as good against him as she did that night. When it was over, they both felt exhilarated and satiated and light as air until the angle of guitar settled in their stomachs. Hood liked thinking of himself as a good guy, and yet sleeping with your brother's girlfriend was exactly the sort of thing a good guy would never do. Certainly not more than once. But there was the night and then another. Then dinner in a restaurant 4 towns up the coast, and then a few discussions of how exactly Ashley should break up with Jay, and then she did it. 5 months ago, Ashley had shown up at Hood's Airstream at 11 o'clock at night and said, I broke up with him, and I think you should know that I love you. Hood had pulled her inside and taken her face in his hands and said, I love you too. I've loved you since, I don't know, well before I should have. And now they were just biding their time, trying to create the perfect moment in which they could tell Jay the half-truth, a half-truth between half-brothers, though Jay and Hood never thought of themselves as half-brothers at all. Come to the party, Hood said to Ashley. I'm ready to tell everyone. I don't know, Ashley said as she put on her white sunglasses and grabbed her keys. We'll see.